Welcome back. Now, you'll recall that the whole purpose of our Sky News Antisemitism Summit was to bring together the brightest minds in the nation across all fields to come up with tangible solutions that would actually address anti-Semitism. There were 15 recommendations at the end of the day, and they included putting anti-Semitism education in the national curriculum, putting Holocaust education back in the national school curriculum, more public awareness and advertising campaigns, a judicial inquiry into anti-Semitism at universities. There were many others, including changes to the Migration Act, others that affected national security, not allowing anti-Semites into the country. Now, Alex Ryvchin wrote to both Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese asking them if they'd endorse these uncontroversial, quite sensible and rational outcomes from the summit. Peter Dutton responded saying he would endorse every single one that fell under the federal government remit. But today, Alex Ryvchin received a letter from the Prime Minister, a 3-page letter, where he failed to endorse a single outcome. And let's bring you now to discuss Executive Council of Australian Juries co-CEO, Alex Ryvchin. Alex, what was your response when you received this letter?
I was thoroughly disappointed, Sharri. As you said, it was a very long and comprehensive response from the Prime Minister in which he very passionately and I believe very sincerely condemned anti-Semitism as an evil and as something un-Australian, and listed the government's measures to date in combating anti-Semitism. But as you point out, when we hosted this summit, it was with a very clear intention and purpose, and it was to move the conversation beyond platitudes and easy self-evident condemnations and to actually talk about the solutions, to come to grips with what's happening in our streets and in our country, to talk about things like the need for a judicial inquiry into campus anti-Semitism, to talk about the Migration Act, to talk about the ideological rigidity that occurs in cultural institutions which contributes to anti-Semitism, all of these things, schools, public campaigns. And the fact that the Prime Minister said so much in that letter but totally ignored what we actually asked of him, which was to consider the action plan, tell us what aspects of it the government would endorse and what aspects he had a problem with, and open up that conversation. But instead it was all missed entirely, and I think it's a missed opportunity. It's thoroughly disappointing. There was a chance to achieve genuine bipartisanship and political consensus around anti-Semitism, and I think the Prime Minister has missed that opportunity.
And, you know, your use of the word bipartisan is a good one, because our summit was bipartisan. We invited both sides of politics, gave both sides an equal voice. You know, and I just think back to that mother who was on Q&A, asked Albanese a question about anti-Semitism on Q&A a few weeks ago, and he said in response, well, we've done everything the Jewish community has asked of us. Well, here you had the Jewish community sending a letter saying these are 15 things that would actually make a difference, and he just won't even consider them. And you mentioned platitudes. In my view, that letter was purely platitudes. So disappointing, Alex. But, you know, we won't stop. Neither you or I, we will not stop campaigning on this. Absolutely. Now, I just want to talk about the brave Palestinian protesters who've come out against Hamas. Now, we've seen them protest on the streets. Have a quick look. Now, in response, Hamas has executed 6 Palestinians. There have also been public beatings. And among those murdered was a 22-year-old, Odai al-Rubai. He was beaten and tortured, only to be later dumped on his family's doorstep. Alex, this is grotesque.
No question about it, Sharri. And what's happening on the streets of Gaza, it poses a real dilemma for the pro-Palestinian movement, which you and I know is really a viciously anti-Israel and pro-Hamas movement for the most part. Because what's happening in Gaza shows that Hamas is overwhelmingly responsible for the plight of the Palestinian people, which goes against the propaganda of the Palestinian movement that Israel is the root of all evil in the Middle East and all suffering for the Palestinians and indeed the world. They often speak about how the removal of Israel will be a great step forward for world peace. The other problem posed by these protests is that it's very clear that the sort of freedoms the Palestinians are now enjoying, to be able to march and voice their opinions and express themselves as they wish, the sort of freedoms that Israelis cherish and enjoy every single day, are being granted to them by virtue of Israeli military power. It is the near destruction of Hamas that has allowed these freedoms, which the leaders of the Palestinian people would never entrust to their own people. But Adam Bant and those who would reflexively condemn all of this, they are so wedded to that ideological position of Israel being uniformly and unequivocally and unavoidably evil that they can't look at the facts on the ground, and they can't express a skerrick of solidarity with these brave people who are being brutalized by Hamas.
We're out of time. Alex, thank you very much. And here, I can't wait for